Story 1: The Generator Room, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. When the lights died, something else woke up. In March 2022, I took a night shift security job at the Sharswood Community Hospital, a half-decommissioned structure in North Philadelphia that was still partially active while the city figured out what to do with it. The top 3 floors were sealed off, most of the staff worked remotely, and only the ER basement records and 2 ICU wings remained open. My job was simple: patrol twice between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., check in every hour on the radio, and most importantly, never enter the old generator room unless specifically ordered. It sounded like an easy gig. The place was creepy but manageable. That is until the storm hit. On the 5th night around 2:08 a.m., the hospital lost all external power. The backup kicked in for the ER and ICU, but the security office went completely dark. I radioed in, no response. My flashlight flickered. The walkie crackled once, then died. The air grew strangely heavy, like all the oxygen had been vacuumed out of the halls. I stepped into the corridor and immediately noticed the silence. Not the quiet of power loss, but a suffocating stillness. No machines, no outside wind, no buzz from emergency lights. It was like the building itself had stopped breathing. Then I heard it dragging footsteps coming from below, from the direction of the generator room. I remembered the warnings, but with comms down and lights out, I figured I had no choice. I made my way down the stairwell where the emergency lights were all dead, and the stench of ozone and burnt hair hit me like a wall. The basement hall twisted like a maze, but the sound guided me, metallic scraping, soft groans, and then breathing. When I opened the generator room door, the flashlight died completely, but even in the blackness, I could feel it, something in the room with me, something large and angry. I whispered hello and instantly regretted it. From the far corner, something hissed, not like an animal, but like steam escaping flesh. Then the lights above me flickered once, revealing for a fraction of a second a human-sized shape fused to the old generator panel wires and tubes, tangled into what used to be a man. His mouth was open in a scream, but no sound came out. Then everything went black again. The floor shook. I ran, tripping and cutting my leg on metal debris, scrambling up the stairs like a madman. When I reached the lobby, the ER lights were back, and the night nurse looked at me like I'd seen death. I quit the next day. The admin director emailed me weeks later to return my badge. She ended the message with one chilling line. "You went into the generator room, didn't you? He doesn't like being seen. Sometimes now during storms, I hear humming under my floorboards like a motor starting. Like something trying to come back online." Story 2: The apartment above the fuse box, Queens, New York. You don't really notice how loud a city is until it goes quiet, and by then it's usually too late. I was living alone in a rent-controlled apartment in Jackson Heights, Queens. An old pre-war building with creaky floors, paper-thin walls, and a maze of hallways that barely made sense even after a year of living there. My place was on the 1st floor and directly beneath the building's fuse box, which hung in a basement corridor lit by one flickering bulb and the occasional squeak of rats. On a scorching July night during the 2021 blackout that hit parts of NYC, the entire building lost power around 2:00 a.m. I was wide awake, trying to cool off by sitting in front of an open window with a spray bottle. When the lights died, I groaned, assuming it was a brownout. But then I noticed something weird: no sound, No humming AC units, no distant car horns, no late-night shouting from Roosevelt Avenue. Just silence, the kind that presses against your ears. I lit a candle, went into the hallway, and saw other tenants stepping out confused and half-dressed. A neighbor named Elsa muttered in Spanish that the building felt wrong. I checked my phone. No signal. When I went to the basement to inspect the fuse box, I immediately regretted it. The air was 10 degrees colder and the smell of wet cement and old mold hit hard. I turned the corner and saw every breaker had been switched off. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was the black handprints smeared across the door. Not dusty, wet, human-sized, but the fingers were too long, the spacing unnatural. I took one step forward and the bulb overhead burst, plunging everything into total darkness. My candle sputtered and died. Then footsteps. Slow, uneven, echoing through the narrow corridor. I pressed myself to the wall, holding my breath. The sound passed me, then stopped right behind me. I spun around and saw nothing, but something whispered in my ear, low and close. You live where I sleep. I bolted up the stairs, heart racing, only to find my apartment door wide open, though I had locked it. Inside, the candles I had left were burning, 3 of them arranged in a triangle on my living room floor. My keys were on the couch. My phone was back on the charger. And on the bathroom mirror in condensation, stay quiet. Power returned around 4 a.m. and I didn't say a word. A few days later, the super told me the basement had been sealed off back in the 70s due to structure issues. I asked him about the fuse box. He looked confused. What fuse box? All the panels are on the roof. I moved out 2 weeks later. But sometimes when it storms and the lights flicker, my apartment fills with that same cold. And for a second, I swear I hear those uneven footsteps above me. Story 3, The Knock. During the blackout, Augusta, Maine. The worst thing about blackouts isn't the dark. It's the way it makes everything sound closer. I was visiting my grandmother's house in Augusta, Maine during the December 2022 ice storm, the kind that takes out entire grids and traps you in the cold with nothing but candles and wool blankets. Her house sat on the edge of the Kennebec River, surrounded by brittle woods and old leaning homes from the 1800s. I was staying the night because she didn't want to be alone, and at 83 she still insisted on heating the place with a stubborn old fireplace and a space heater. Around 9:30 p.m. the lights flickered and went out entirely. My phone battery was low, so I turned it off to save power. We sat in the living room wrapped in quilts, playing cards by lantern light. She kept glancing toward the hallway, and when I asked why, she whispered that part of the house remembers him. I didn't push. I figured she was being cryptic and cold, but at midnight she went to bed and left me by the fire. That's when the knocking started. 1, 2, 3. Slow and deliberate. It came from the back door, the one that faced the trees. At first I thought it might be a branch or the wind, but then it happened again, 3 knocks. And then seconds later from the side door, 3 more. I grabbed the flashlight, but it barely flickered. Through the frosted glass I saw nothing. But the moment I turned off the light and listened, I heard it breathing, low and raspy right outside the door. I backed away. Then came a knock from the kitchen window. Then the hallway closet. Always 3. I ran upstairs to wake my grandmother, only to find her sitting up in bed staring at the far corner of the room. She said, "Don't open any door. It only wants one." When I asked her what she meant, she told me a story I'll never forget. When she was a child, the house belonged to her uncle, who died during a blackout in 1948. He had answered a knock at the back door and was found the next morning frozen and contorted like he'd seen something unspeakable. Since then, every time the power went out, the knocking returned. Always in threes, always in sequence. She said it only ever got in if someone opened a door during the knocks. "It's a pattern," she whispered. "Break it or it breaks in." That night we sat in silence, counting 1, 2, 3, then we waited, then again 1, 2, 3. It went on for almost 2 hours. At one point it switched locations mid-pattern, front, side, back, like it was testing us. By 3:00 a.m. it stopped. The lights came on 10 minutes later, and carved into the snow outside each door was a set of footprints, barefoot with pointed toes and no heels. Like something not quite human had been walking circles around the house. I never visited again, but sometimes during storms, when the power flickers in my own apartment, I hear faint knocks. Always in threes,